Come on over. Come on down. They're shy. It's the honor system. It's
So it is Korea?
It's Korea. Call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Great. Well, welcome to all of you students. It's nice to see you here. If you have anything you want to say during public comment on items not on the agenda, you could get a blue card now and turn it into Laurie, who's raising her hand right there, and tell us what you think about something that you think the board should know about. While you're here, I thought I'd let you know that. Okay. There were no actions taken in closed session to report out or consider in closed session for action in open session, bringing us to C4, statements of abstention. C5, adjustments to the agenda. Director Carl?
Can you pull E9 for me from the consent?
Yes, and Director Fong, same thing, E9? Yes. Thank you. Okay, board member request for information. Director Sheffield.
Try to get this correct. At our September 12th board meeting, the board voted for approval of revised board policy 3513.3, the tobacco and cannabis-free schools policy. The policy was presented with recommendations from legal counsel citing California legislative law pertaining to the position or use of recreational medical cannabis on school campuses. Subsequently, the board adopted a policy that prohibits the administering of medical cannabis on school campuses. Last week, a California administrative law judge ruled in a local case involving Rincon Valley Union School District, granting the right of a student to take her cannabis medication administered by a nurse on campus. Additionally, and somewhat related, SB 1127 from Senator Hill, known as JoJo's Act, which authorizes the governing body of a school district to adopt a policy that allows a parent or guardian to possess and administer medical cannabis to a pupil at a school site if the pupil is qualified, if he's a qualified patient to receive the medication. This bill is on the governor's desk, and it is to either be signed or vetoed at the end of this month. So I am requesting an update on SB 1127 and what it means for our schools, as well as any legal impacts of the court's ruling against the Rincon Valley School District case, and how this may affect our recently adopted tobacco and cannabis-free school policy.
Director Sheffield will bring back that information, give you an update on the policy as well as any next steps for the district.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other requests for information? No, thanks. Okay, C7, approval of minutes of the regular board meeting held on September 12th, 2018.
Move approval.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? Aye. Director Christoph?
Abstain.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Pugh? I'm sorry. Director Anderson?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Approval of the minutes of special board meeting held on September 19th, 2018.
I'll move
that.
Now I'm going to need a second.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Christoph. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Abstain.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, that brings us to our reports. D1, CSEA report. Is President Afonso here?
Public comment on non-agenda items.
C9, man, I get moving so fast. That was the pressure that, yes, no, but President Afonso's not here anyway. Okay, but so that is public comment on non-agenda items. Again, students, you have 6 minutes to make up your mind and turn in blue card. This is your opportunity to tell the school board what you think about something going on at your schools. I mean, what do you got to have some thoughts, maybe. Okay, so if you think of something, you don't have to talk for 3 minutes, but you have up to 3 minutes. You can talk for 30 seconds, you can talk for a minute. Just making that invitation yet again. Okay, so this is the opportunity for the public to address the board on items not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes. If it's something relating to a personnel matter, I would ask that you refrain from making those comments and instead direct them to Assistant Superintendent of HR, who's sitting at the front table. And we, as a reminder, we cannot comment or discuss comment on or discuss the comments that you make here today. So we'll start with Steve Dennison, and after that will be Davey Cardenas.
Sorry.
We gotta turn your mic. Okay, you're good.
Okay. I'm here tonight to talk about the status of the Columbine Lock program and what percentage we are at completion. As of the 14th, the governor signed Assembly Bill 3205 for all new construction and remodel work that we know about that will have these Columbine locks. What I don't know is where we're at within our district. I know that after the Florida shooting, I know President Close was frustrated just by watching the meeting that night with where we are at. I also witnessed what happened at Santa Rosa High School 2 weeks later when we had a situation there and the police responded. And the quote in the Press Democrat from the responding officer was, "I'm sure glad that my kids are not in high school anymore." And that is what brought me here today. I have coached Little League, I coached in the Santa Rosa City School District, and I just retired from coaching. Right now, my agenda in life is to get this done and to get these schools safe. I provide you with some information from Armacore, which is a fiberglass panel to be attached to existing doors. This is a down-the-line item. I understand there's no money for this type of item, but we have to start somewhere, and somewhere is with these Columbine locks. The problem is that when we were young, we had earthquake and fire drills, and these kids are dealing with intruder drills, and yet our campuses are pretty much the same. I went through this district from Proctor Terrace to middle school to Santa Rosa High, and I've walked these campuses and researched, and I haven't seen much change, and so that's why I'm here. So the sad reality is that we have lost more students in the United States than we have soldiers in military combat in the last year. So what I'm saying here is that I personally am here to offer my help, assistance, guidance to get this program going and to get to 100% on these Columbine locks, or at the minimum, the magnetic strips that the teachers can pull and automatically lock the door. So thank you for your time, your effort, not just tonight, but throughout the year. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate your concern, and I'm not commenting necessarily on your quote, on your comment, but I will say that I think it was 2 or 3 board meetings ago we had a facilities update on the agenda, and you might want to look at that. Or on tape, it might give you some information. Okay, thank you. Daisy Cardenas.
You know, it would be actually, Rick could go up and talk to him.
Rick, you might be able to, or yeah, Mike, could you direct him to what date that report was so he could find it on the web?
And information about where we are.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, hello everybody, my name is Daisy Cardenas. I was invited by Evelyn Anderson here today to talk a little bit about our project. As you all see, or the people in the front have received the little bracelets, and it says, let's talk about it. I work for the Testimonios Project under Latino Service Providers here in Sonoma County. And this is a group of high school students from various high schools that talk about suicide prevention, and mental health stigmas within our community. Last week, we were at a screening from Not Alone, and somebody said that within the last year in Sonoma County, there has been 8 youth that have died by suicide. Sorry. So I invite everybody to check us out. All the youth that are here, check us out on Instagram, Facebook. And if you're interested in joining our program, we start recruiting in November. This is for students 16 to 24, and you get trained as a mental health, community mental health worker, and you get to go out into the community and do presentations. So thank you.
Thank you. Daisy, can you tell us what on Facebook, what's the handle, and on Instagram?
Yeah, so it's Latino Service Providers, and then it's at Testimonios Project.
Okay.
Yes.
And the same thing on Instagram? Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last chance. Anybody? All right, maybe next time. You know. Okay, D2, Santa Rosa Teachers Association, SRTA report. Mr. Lyon, President Lyon.
Superintendent Kitamura, President Close, members of the school board, and members of the community. I'm William Lyon, the president of Santa Rosa Teachers Association, representing over 975 teachers, counselors, school psychologists, nurses, and other educational professionals. I want to share a quick quote tonight. Ultimately, people want to feel valued, have their expertise and knowledge recognized, feel safe in expressing and sharing ideas, and work together with others towards a shared vision and purpose. That was written by our very own Stacy Spector, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, in an article titled Cultivating Labor and Management Collaboration. I think she's a real asset, and I look forward to spending more time with her and others who are going to the Labor Management Conference over the next 2 days. It's going to take leadership from all sides if we're going to make Santa Rosa a truly collaborative district, and I'm glad to have Ms. Spector, CSEA President Tammy Alfonso, and others on the team to do this important work. I thank you all in advance for stepping up on that. I think that quote sums up exactly how teachers feel. We want to be valued. We want to have our expertise and knowledge recognized. We want to feel safe in expressing and sharing our ideas, and we want to work together with others towards a shared vision. I bring this up gently, but earnestly with an eye towards helping, because this week we are learning that some of our concerns regarding the A through G implementation are starting to happen. I don't think it'd be appropriate to go into detail about it in this venue at this time, but I do want to share some of the general concerns that SRTA has about it. Talking to site and district administrators about our concerns with A through G, and others I would add, I get responses that fall into 2 categories. The first is an administrator that recognizes that A through G all the way is a big lift for all of us. They recognize there are going to be bumps along the way. We might stub our toes, and we're going to have to work together for the next few years to get this right. They take our concerns seriously, they take the time to really understand them, and they seem eager to roll up their sleeves and start working on solutions. We love that and we applaud it. The second response I hear is dismissive, sometimes even accusatory. Things like, that's not an issue because ABC, or teachers and counselors just need to XYZ. Some version of the, you just need to differentiate harder. The worst is when teachers or counselors are actually blamed for any of the issues. Like, other districts have already done this. Why don't our teachers already know how to do it? And why are they teaching if they can't make this work? So those are really concerning, right? Ouch. If we get a response like that, we don't feel valued, our expertise and knowledge is not recognized, we don't feel safe in expressing and sharing our ideas, and it's a barrier to working together with others towards a shared vision and purpose. I would like to say in the strongest terms, our teachers and staff love our students. We are working our fingers to the bone to help them succeed every day in every classroom. We are committed to equity and access for all of our students, even if we have different views on what that means in practice. And we are implementing a ton of new curriculum while at the same time implementing A through G. With that said, I have a few asks. First, please do give us a meaningful seat at the table as we work on solving the inevitable issues that come up with such an important and far-reaching policy change. Superintendent Kitamura has promised me and SRTA that we will implement this collaboratively, and the school board has directed it, and I appreciate that. I thank you. Assistant Superintendent Ana Guzman was earnestly asking members that want to join the implementation committee to talk to their principals and get involved with solving these issues. I join her in asking our members to help us get this right. Some of our members are concerned that the decisions have already been made and that the committee will be used as a rubber stamp, as has happened in the past. I ask that we truly work together to do what is right for our students, for all of our students. Second, please avoid blaming teachers, counselors, or other staff for any of the issues that arise. John Lennon said, "There are no problems, only solutions." I hope he's right about that. And I think that's a good thought going forward. Let's focus on solutions, forward, not backwards, and really look into the details and into the minutia. That seems like a better approach. And there'll be a lot of little minutia that we'll have to work on. There isn't one big problem to fix, lots of little things, all of it's solvable. We got to do it together. Especially, pretty please with sugar on top. Avoid and saying anything that sounds like teachers are racist, lazy barriers to our students' success, who don't care about students. Those ideas are so far from the truth that I hope every one of us will reject them and refocus our energy on solving the very real issues that pop up as we do this important work. Thank you very much in advance for treating our members with respect that we deserve. I will ask our members to treat you with the same respect as we work together to do what is right for students and staff, whatever issues and challenges we face. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a Labor Management Collaborative Report, LMC?
Our first meeting will actually be Thursday, October 7th from 3:30 to 5, and that meeting will be after members of the team, as Mr. Lyon referenced, will be attending a 2-day conference the next 2 days on how we engage in processes and timelines to come together to collaborate.
Great, thank you. Superintendent report.
Thank you, President Close. First of all, I want to thank the administrators, staff, students and families for the back-to-school nights last week. I can assure you that next year, as we're planning this calendar, we will definitely not have a board meeting on the same night as one of our back-to-school nights. I very much miss not being able to attend the middle school back-to-school night, so we'll take a look at that. I want to thank Assemblyman Wood for visiting our Integrated Wellness Center. He is actually one of the first I think one of our first legislators to come and take a look, and so we greatly appreciate that and his support and his spreading the word about this wonderful center that we need to have people attend. So we had our first budget advisory committee this week, led by Assistant Superintendent Edson. Great turnout, great representation held at Brook Hill Elementary. We want to continue to have that representation from school sites, teachers, classified staff, community members, administration, so that we can have that open, transparent process for our budgeting process. I want to give an appreciation for Jordan Albiani and Lisa Peel, the ag teachers at Santa Rosa High, who invited me to attend their chapter officer leadership conference last Friday. So if you didn't know, there were 220 FFA members from throughout the North Bay at Santa Rosa High School for 2 days, and learning to be great leaders in our community. And so it was wonderful to see so many great students there and so many great chapter leaders there, and enjoying our Santa Rosa hospitality. Our first district advisory committee is coming up on Thursday. Please spread the word. Each of your schools has a representative to this committee in the form of your parents. It is your ELAC president, your PFO, PTO, PTA, your parent organization president, and then one other parent of choice by the school. Those three people meet with me once a month so we can talk about issues. They can give feedback to different things that are going on and have a forum to ask questions. So students out there, ask your parents, are they coming? Have them come. Who is a representative? Go ask your principal. Who are the DAC representatives to our district advisory committee? Because I want them to be there to be able to participate collaboratively about what goes on in the district. This Friday, we have a ribbon cutting ceremony for the brand new stadium at Carrillo High School. We've been going back and forth between Carrillo and Pioneer, but it's Carrillo High School. So we'll be out there this Friday to have a ribbon cutting ceremony or a paper through the boys football, some sort of inauguration for the wonderful stadium out there. And lastly, our board meetings, this board meeting is the last board meeting between now and October 8th and 9th. So when we come back to see you in October, it's gonna actually be after the first anniversary of the fire. The only thing I wanted to say at this point is how proud I am of the students, the staff, and the families in the Santa Rosa community. I want to acknowledge, in particular, students who have talked to me through their administrators or directly about not wanting to be called victims anymore, and that it's really about surviving. And I say, well, what about we thrive? How about we thrive, not even just survive? And they agree with me. And that they really want this year to be called the year after, not the fire anniversary or anything like that, but really the year after. They're even going so far as to say, instead of just saying moving forward, we as a student body, we as a student group, we as the community want to say, pay it forward. So there are going to be numerous individual activities at each of the sites for each of the sites to work through whatever it is they want to do to commemorate the year after. And many of these sites do have activities that are about paying it forward. So as much as we were given from throughout the community, throughout the United States, they are now in turn, and we are now in turn, paying that forward to the communities in Shasta County and anywhere else that there is a need. So I just wanted to say that since we will be in between times with the anniversary of the fire, and thank the board, the community, and all of you here for the tremendous support and this attitude, this belief about paying it forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'll start my report by saying Frank, Director Pugh is he's out of state. I forget where he is, but he's attending to his business as president of National School Board Association. So he's missed, but we're glad he's representing us there at the national level, and looking forward to when members of the NSBA board visit us at the end of the month here in Santa Rosa. The second thing is, last week I went to Sacramento to the Ed Trust West Equity Forum with Superintendent Kitamura, Director Evans, Director Fong, and one of our new directors, Stephanie Manieri. and it was a whole day spent talking about equity in schools and how to address issues such as achievement opportunity gap, issues relating to supporting English learners. It was inspirational, both just from the keynote speakers, and it also was opportunity to learn best practices at other districts about how they're addressing these issues and supporting students. It was a really informative day by a great organization who does really good work. And it was also fun because our district was a little bit of a rock star there. We went around and got congratulations and high fives from people around the state and members of Ed Trust West for our recent change in graduation policy to align with the A through G standards. As we've said before, and I'll say again, we have a appointment process going on in the second trustee area in District 2, and those applications will be accepted until October 8th. We have 5 people so far who've submitted applications, and we're hoping to have many, many more. Hopefully the PD will even give us more ink to alert people to this opportunity so that we can have a good pool from which to choose. We're going to have a paper screening first by a committee on the board, and that committee will consist of Director Fong, Director Anderson, and myself, and we will choose finalists from the paper applications on October 11th, and then on October 24th, in open session, we will interview the candidates, and then the public will have an opportunity to comment on the finalists, and then the board will discuss in open session and appoint in open session on that night. And so if you're interested in meeting the candidates or listening to them speak, listening to us interview them, and then maybe giving your feedback on them in real time, please be here on the 24th. And tell your friends, anybody who lives in District 2 in the Northwest region of Santa Rosa who is interested to look into it. On Friday, I spent the day with a group of business and community leaders and electeds assembled by the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber and California Forward to spend the day in a facilitated planning discussion around creating housing opportunities and how to support more housing development. And I was invited to be a representative of the schools because of the the recognition of how our success is really interrelated, and that we are one of the largest employers in the county. We are certainly the largest educator and the largest daycare provider at a very basic level that allows people to go to work. And there's a real recognition, and there was throughout the day, that we have a housing problem for all of working people in Sonoma County, and there's a specific concern about teachers and classified staff members. So it was a really good day, and I think there were some good plans made. It will be interesting to see what happens to them, but I really appreciate the invitation and the recognition by Metro Chamber and the business community and county leadership of how the schools are an integral part of our recovery and our economic resilience. I think I've said before that I, as an individual, am a member of the steering committee for the housing bond, Measure N, and I, as part of that group, went and met with the Press Democrat editorial board to talk about the housing bond. And again, I want to thank the Press Democrat for their clear concern based on questions that were asked for our student body and how it's recovering for our, the loss of students due to the fire, for how our fire survivors are handling things, how our staff are handling things, and also whether or not we are having staffing problems due to housing costs and shortages. So I appreciate the PD's interest in that, and also want to publicly thank Santa Rosa Teachers Association for endorsing Measure N. And that is my report. Board member reports. Director Sheffield?
Nothing to report this evening.
Director Anderson?
I attended Back to School Night at Maria Carrillo, where they did something different, because in all the years past, we tried unsuccessfully to all fit into the really hot gym where the sound system never worked. So instead, this year they did a block party on campus, and just had an opportunity to find out about all the different organizations, the parent organization, and all the booster clubs, and it was organized and marketed. It was actually they were the first client for the Pathway Academy for Work and Service. So they did the organization and marketing and did an outstanding job. And then also it was included the culinary program and a Parents Association, leadership students, and Puma peers. And it really played into also this year's school theme of community building, and showing that, well, they've also done a lot of campus improvement, because pride of space is part of building community, and that whole feeling and getting to know each other better. There's going to have a lot of parent workshops, and just really what the tagline is, our back to school night was a true demonstration of community coming together for the common good. So I think it was an extremely successful event, and it really ties into this year's graduation profile element, which is universal citizen. That's the U in Puma. And then I did also attend the screening for Not Alone, and that is a documentary that was primarily filmed with students in Marin County by Kiki Cochet, who was there that evening and was part of a really interesting conversation. And thank you, Daisy, for coming and speaking about LSP and the Testimonious Project. Are there any students here this evening? Understandable, because the LSP students were a great part of the audience that evening, and what really I noted was when everybody said that the best way to communicate with teens is from teens, especially on such a difficult issue. Everyone in the room, their heads were nodding up and down. So it was a really powerful evening. If you haven't seen Not Alone yet, I really encourage you. It's actually available on Netflix, and hopefully at some point we'll get another screening primarily for students. So it's called Not Alone, and it's by Kiki Gaucher. And again, it was just a really impactful evening on a really important topic that I hope we can continue talking about and building awareness.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention that that's why we have these. So thank you, Daisy. That night, leave it to our students to step up when needed, because, I've been concerned about how do we kind of put out the word and get people talking about suicide prevention and suicidal thought. And so the LSP project gave everybody these neat little wristbands with a message that said, LSP Testimonious Project trains students age 16 to 25 to become advocates of mental health. Wear this bracelet as a reminder to talk about, oh, this is a different message than the one I had. So mine said, Testimonious Project encourages you to wear the bracelet as a reminder that no matter how difficult things may seem, there is always hope. For information about the project, please contact us at 707-837-9577. So thank you for all of our bracelets.
Yeah, thank you. Director Carl.
Thank you. I want to thank Superintendent Kitamura for your comments about the upcoming anniversary. It's an important thing for folks to understand that my wife, for instance, said within a month that we're not fire victims, we're fire survivors, and we've adopted that. I've had the discussion with Evelyn, the other fellow board member who's gone through this, that is a critical element. As a victim, you have a much different position than as a survivor, and your concept with respect to paying it forward and moving forward is critical. It's an interesting time to be having an anniversary and to have the community focus on the anniversary And I can tell you that a lot of us who are survivors are less interested in anniversary celebrations is not the term. People have stayed away from that, but still the recognition of the anniversary as being something, as opposed to focusing our attention on going forward, process forward, understanding how things happen and how we can prevent or significantly reduce the likelihood of it happening again, and most importantly, do a better job as a community in terms of how to warn people and how to keep people safe. And the other thing out of that is that those of us that have survived are empowered to a great degree to want to help others, as you indicated. Our community, our state, and our nation regularly faces natural disasters and other kinds of things that occur, and it's a reminder that we are stronger by working together and figuring out ways to move forward and understand each other than we are in figuring out ways to find divisions, differences, and a lot of the stuff that we see happening at a different political level. So it's encouraging from that perspective, and to the extent that we take the anniversary and use it in that regard from a humanistic standpoint, we will have accomplished something. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pearl. Thank you. Director Fong, if you'll hold on 1 second, I forgot one thing from my report, that there's a group of folks associated with the district, Santa Rosa Team Phoenix, who has been working hard over the last several months to raise money for our students who lost their homes in the fire. And they've been getting $400 gift cards from local businesses, which is also good for our economy, and giving them to fire survivors from our district. And they are having an event where they're called Paint Night, NITE, and you can find out about it on the web at www.paintnite.com on Sunday, October 14th at 2 at the Church of the Roses, and they will be painting the iconic Fountain Grove Round Barn Inn, and all of the ticket proceeds will be going to raise more money to get gift cards for our fire survivors in our district. And with that, Director Fong.
Couple things tonight. I just want to give a shout out to all those who are at Lincoln School, one of our elementary schools on the west side, West 9th, and I visited them. What a gem of a school and a dedicated staff. And if we're thinking about the A to G and how we're finally going to get to A to G, I will tell you that the teachers at the elementary sites are really working hard on this as well. And their focus is literacy and reading and writing, and the teachers are doing the kinds of things that we want to see the kids do when they're in high school: independent study, research, project-based, collaboration. Amazing things there. So I really want to thank Principal Janine Wilson and the staff there. Nice job. Also, we're talking about that our district got called out again in a positive way, not called out in a bad way, but called out again in a positive way for our anti-bias training, unconscious bias training, and everything that we're doing. So everybody who's gone to that and participated in that, kudos to everybody who's participated. It's been great. A report just came out in the state of California. It's a policy analysis report. It takes a lot of research, lots of researchers, heavy-hitting researchers at the university levels, coordinated by Stanford, to inform educators, to inform the people living in California, and the legislators also, about what we need. And one of the best practices cited in that was the training that Santa Rosa City Schools has provided to their staff for anti-bias, unconscious bias training. We've been to the Museum of Tolerance, you've heard that before, and we have partnered with CTA to do that. So I hope we continue that, because it is a best practice in the state of California. And that report is called Getting Down to Facts 2. Interesting report, says a lot of stuff about what California should be doing. A lot of it is directed at the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Christoph. You want to turn on your mic?
I'll pass on my individual report. I do have something to say about CSBA after a lot.
Okay, why don't you go ahead?
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead now, Director Christoph? Go ahead. Director Christoph, why don't you do your, we'll come back to her. What, oh, for God's sakes.
Okay, I wanted to mention as I come to the end of my term on the board that my responsibilities with CSBA will be finished as well, and I have sent my thank you and goodbye letters in for both the legislative committee and for the delegate assembly, and I can tell you that I've had a wonderful experience. I got to meet some people from all over the state in the delegate assembly, see issues that arose, and had good back and forth discussions and some pretty heated discussions. The legislative committee, I worked with staff very closely, 20 other members on the committee, again people from all over the state, different size districts, and I made a lot of friends, and I am totally impressed with CSBA staff. They run a very, very good organization. If you're interested in legislation and what's going on in terms of trends, it is a position that is very exciting. You're right there in the forefront of what is going to be happening in the near future and the far future, hopefully, as well. As I step down and say goodbye to people, I can tell you that the full and fair funding is a very important concept for CSBA, and it has been for me on this board and for this board for a long time. But the one thing I will not be able to advocate for that I feel very strongly about is the idea that we have neglected training the workforce of the future in education. We have bits and pieces where we've kind of thrown some money at it, but I would hope that the CSBA will pick up the ball along with CTA, AFT, other organizations to make sure that we are incentivizing not just teachers, but people to go into administration, to people to go into board positions, and many other positions, support positions that we need in education. I bring this up because I would like to encourage the board members who are staying here to possibly get involved. I wish I had gotten involved earlier. It is a commitment on top of a big commitment, but I think the rewards, I will miss it dearly, and I think the rewards are very, very fine. And anyway, it's a organization, I think, that offers some real insight, and I would hope that some of our board members might take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Student board member.
Yeah, so this past week I was able to meet with a few students from the district, and I'll be taking on the dress code project that Luke started last year. So hopefully I'll have more to come on that in the next few meetings.
Thank you very much. And Superintendent, you forgot something too, yeah?
I did, and I don't know how this slipped my mind because it's so wonderful. This last Saturday, we had the first Youth Summit 2018 at Sonoma State, and it was in conjunction with the Sonoma State Black Students Union. We provided a bus to go down for this wonderful leadership conference, and Elizabeth, how many students attended? Wonderful. So our first time with having this Youth Summit 2018, I want to thank Regina Brennan, a retired Santa Rosa City Schools teacher, as well as Nzinga Woods, a teacher in ArtQuest, for having all the leadership and all the hard work to put this Youth Summit on. So I'm looking forward to next year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Move approval of items E1 through E8.
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Christoph is gone. Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student board member?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And that brings us to E9, which we pulled, which is the approval of the school site plans. Director Carl, you want to speak to that?
Sure.
And Director Fong.
Thank you for including those. I want to thank the principals that educated me through those plans, particularly Julian at Burbank and Tim at Piner. Those two particular reports were quite good in terms of understanding what kinds of issues were occurring at those sites and conclusions that were then drawn by the principal and staff about what to do on a go-forward basis. There appeared to be, especially in those two situations, a lot of time and effort put into it. There were a number of reports that didn't reflect the same amount of time and thought process, and in some cases reports that drew no conclusions looking at the data, which was a little distressing because it is kind of, I understand that this is a report that's used from a federal funding standpoint, and I'm not sure how much focus is put on it, and I also understand that we've had some principal turnover, but as a board member, I found it very instructive and very helpful to match data with then conclusions that were drawn by principals and staff and frankly the members of the committee that presumably were involved with that. So thank you for that. I did note in the suspension rates in elementary school that there were some that had reduced, but there were several that had increased. And the universal comment was we need more restorative work. Even in cohort 3, we had one school that substantially reduced suspension and expulsions, and another cohort where it actually went up. And I can talk to staff separately about it. There's no reason to call out any particular schools in that regard, but it was, I think, particularly instructive that we've got more work to do. BEST was noted in a couple of cases as having impact. And I'm also aware of the fact that, these are 2 years, it's 2 years worth of data, and in some cases people were saying it's hard to draw conclusions based on 2 years, but it is data nonetheless, and there are changes nonetheless. So understanding those changes, why they're occurring, and how to deal with that, I think is important, and I'm hopeful that, that those reports are taken seriously by folks in the future so that the board will have that kind of information and can start seeing trends, seeing where things are successful, and replicating those areas where there is success, and working hard in those areas where we're having some difficulty. So I thought there was a lot of good data in there. I was disappointed in some of the information that was not provided, and hope that that will be something that's focused on in the future.
Thank you, Director Fong.
I also wanted to make sure I commented on the SIPSAs and that single plan for student achievement, which I always wanted to call school plan for student achievement, which kind of makes more sense. And they're really long, lengthy documents with a lot of detail on it. And it is really, they are really supposed to say how the school is going to spend resources, which include time and money, to help the unduplicated count of our students, the homeless youth, the foster, English language learner, and low income. So it reflects the LCAP, of course. I have to compliment the site councils and the leaders at the school sites and the principals for putting these together, and certainly district administrators, Anna Guzman probably, who oversaw those SIPSAs, and Steve. They really represent a great deal of thinking and how we spend this money. Are we going to have an extra counselor, a support counselor? Are we going to have a reading specialist? Are we going to have instructional aides? And it's easy to want everything, because we do want everything in classrooms, because we need everything. But when we're really looking at how we spend our resources carefully, and it's too bad because the reports we've been reading on, getting down to facts that I talked about earlier is like, we need more resources at all of our sites in the entire state, but in the meantime, we're making do with what we have. And so we have to keep a laser eye, like Director Carl was saying, in terms of like what is bringing us results. And sometimes results don't happen overnight. Well, they never happen overnight. Sometimes they take a few years. But I think with positive intent and what SRTA President Will Lyon was talking about in terms of teachers loving their kids and teachers having great intent and positive intent, we're all rowing the same direction. So I want to link my thoughts here. We just heard a report at the last special session by district leaders on where we're going, how we're going there, and what we're doing. We heard a report a few weeks ago about the systems and about how we're doing and how we open school. And what I'm seeing, to everybody's credit, and to the leadership credit here, Superintendent, is that there's a blueprint for us rowing in the same direction. And everyone has their part. And deep implementation, the devil is in the details, is where we have to make things happen in the classroom between the teacher and the student, the teacher and the class, with teacher time, teacher collaboration, and resources for that teaching. The elementary SIPSAs were laser focused, 201. They were focused on literacy, period. Literacy in reading, math, and writing, period. And that's what's going to help us to get to A to G. Right, when these kids grow up. It's not going to be very long before they get into high school. The secondary, the middle school and the high school SIPSAs focused more on broader things, with the exception of one school. They focused on the grad rate and the A to G completion and EL support and after-school success, but they all have different ways to do that because they know their schools well. So we're looking for results. We will continue to look for results. I will on the board. The board will look for that data. We just got a big data dump on us. It was like deep. And then again, finally about equity. It's not just that we want these things, that we need these things, but where are we spending our resources with a lens of equity? Who needs it the most? Period, because there's only so much of a pie. And the last thing I will say is that with everything that I've been learning as a board member, I'm still learning with things like this report here from major researchers in our state, and with the other report, this is called the Majority Report, is about Latinos in our state. Our district is doing every single best practice the way researchers and policy analysts and the big thinkers in our state who are getting paid to do this, we're doing exactly what they say are best practices. So we are on the right track. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the teachers and the students and the families, because we're going to do this. We're going to do this together, and our numbers are going to come up. We're going to be very proud about that. So thank you, everyone.
I'll move approval of item E9.
Thank you, Director Fong, for your comments. Is there a second?
I will second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Pugh? I'm sorry. Director Anderson?
Aye.
President Close?
Director Sheffield, aye.
Sorry, Director Sheffield?
Aye.
I had you down as the second. President Close?
Aye.
Student board member?
Aye.
Okay, we got our motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to our F agenda. For starting with F1 action item, approval of resolution recognizing October 2008 as Filipino American History Month.
President Close, members of the board, Superintendent Kunemura, we'd like to recognize the month of October as Filipino History Month. It's important to recognize the contributions, the recognition of the heritage, and the efforts that have brought the Filipino community to California and the United States as early as 1587, as we found. California is home to over half of the Filipino population in the United States, and location of historic Filipino communities include Los Angeles, San Francisco, Stockton, Vallejo, Delano, San Diego, Salinas, and of course Santa Rosa, amongst others. So we'd like to bring this forward for a motion and approval.
Thank you, Director Mazzara. Any questions or comments?
I will say, President Close, we did have a presentation, but the people who were going to do the presentation got stuck in the hurricane coming back from the Philippines, and so otherwise we would definitely have had a special recognition. So yeah, they're okay, but delayed and couldn't be here tonight.
Well, maybe we could bring them back on another night.
Absolutely.
Great. I'm glad they're safe. Okay.
I move approval of resolution recognizing October 2018 as Filipino American History Month.
Second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Carl. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Carl? Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. F2, action item approval of resolution recognizing October 8th through 14th, 2018 as Week of the School Administrator.
So, yes, there's so much to say about administrators. I mean, I don't have enough time. We'd be here all night. They are one of the most hardest working individuals. And please, nobody get offended that they don't work as hard, but I want to tell you, administrators have to have this balancing act between how do they fulfill the needs of their communities at their schools, but also with the district. They have to be on the spot, quick thinkers, decision makers during all kinds of situations that they can never get a common stream of thought because they're interrupted so many times. So students, you think about your administrators, your principals, your co-principals, they are all over the place on your campuses ensuring that things are running smoothly, educational programs are operating, and things are safe. Am I right? Yes? Yes? Yes! So in honor of all that they do and in recognition of Administrator Week, and that principals are the second most important factor for student achievement and learning besides teachers. Teachers are number one, principals are number two. We are pleased to be able to put forward this resolution in honor of both site and district administrators. Each of the names of our site administrators, co-administrators, district office administrators are listed on this resolution. We will be sending out to the sites, to the administrators and those that are here tonight, and administrators we have here tonight. Laurie will play Vanna. Do we have any administrators? Oh, Mr. Gabriel Albavera, come down so you can be given the first gift. Come down. Come on down. Mike Braff, you're here. Beth Burke, come here. Come over here.
Administrators, come one, come all, with enthusiasm,
Hurry.
pride.
They get a present. And so,
We'll even clap.
yay.
Steve.
So on the bottle, what does it say, Mr. Albavera, on the bottle? In recognition of Administrator Week. October 8th to the 14th.
Living your purpose is worth more than 100 grand.
Living your purpose is worth more than 100 grand. Open the bottle. $100 grand.
$100,000.
Let's give our administrators a hand. Yes.
Beth, since you're in this group, you should do a group selfie. You should show off your group selfie technique. No? No. Director Fong.
So this comment is to the students in the audience. The best present you can give your principal, your administrators, your assistant principal, your vice principal, is just a letter or just a shout out or just go say hey and try to make a relationship, because they love kids too and they don't have their own classrooms anymore. So they love it when their students come and say hi, and even if it's a complaint, it means you're paying attention. Just make a relationship.
And it pays to show up at board meetings too, doesn't it?
Right.
I'll move approval of resolution number 2018-19022, recognizing October 8th through 14th, 2018 as Week of the School Administrator.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. That was exciting. All right, so let's bring us to F3, a discussion item, multi-agency active shooter training at Pioneer High School, results and feedback from participating agencies.
Evening.
I'll start.
Yeah. Training sergeant, yeah.
Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kittamura, members of the board. Tonight I'm really excited to be joined by Training Sergeant Rob Reynolds from Santa Rosa Police Department. As you may recall, in July we brought in an item to the board to approve active shooter drills and training at Pioneer High School. That from our perspective, what we were able to see was very successful in the comments that we received while we visited the trainings over the course of a few days. Tonight, Training Sergeant Reynolds will go into detail about what took place on those days and provide some feedback for the use of our school site for this training. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Reynolds.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for allowing us the opportunity to use Pioneer High School for our joint active shooter training. So thank you very much. That training that we had there was very successful. We collaborated with the fire department and the training was outstanding. We brought in outside agencies that volunteered to come up and take part in our training, which the training kind of got put together last minute, but it proved very beneficial for these other agencies that came up. Some of these agencies even brought up their command staff to view our training. So we also incorporated our dispatch. That was something that we kind of put in at the end, Redcom, who's fire's dispatch. So we all came together and we got volunteers from the police academy, the junior college, and it just worked out phenomenal. There was a lot of great things that we learned out of this training. Battalion Chief T.C. Collins from the fire department, myself, we're very pleased on our staff as far as the training that we had done prior to this this training block was just outstanding. They all came through and relied back on their training, so it was very, very beneficial. So I put together a quick PowerPoint with some photographs of the training, and then we'll go through it here. So attending the training, so we had 46 officers from the Santa Rosa Police Department, 5 sergeants, 7 command staff members, which are lieutenants or captains, 10 dispatchers, and 4 press information officers. And then from the Santa Rosa Junior College, we had 7 officers, Highway Patrol 4, Probation Department, we had 5 officers, Rona Park Police Department, 3 officers, Petaluma Police Command Staff had 2 people show up, Highway Patrol had 1 commander. So overall, we had 65 officers that attended, 5 sergeants, 10 from command staff, 10 dispatchers, and 4 public press information officers. So I'll just talk briefly about these slides. So obviously we use the parking lot as kind of our gathering point for our training. So during the scenario, so what our SWAT guys did is they actually put together real scenarios that officers could respond to and that were dispatched like an actual event. So this is an officer getting ready to be sent to a call, responding. The people you see in the orange vests are our SWAT officers. They're our safety officers for the training. This was a staging area for responding units. Instead of everybody coming in their cars, we just had everybody respond from the parking lot as they would on a normal call. So you'll see here, you have police officers up front here, and then in the back is some fire personnel. So this is a portion of the training where they're going in with police to find the victims. Our dispatch command bus was out there. That's where our dispatchers were located. And so when we talk about unified command with police and fire, any major event, such as an active shooter, they'll work together. So in this picture, it shows that our police commanders and the fire commanders are working together. And then we have a triage center where the victims were taken and treated for their injuries by the fire department. So just to back up a little bit, the fire department had 125 firefighters go through the training, which was everybody that they expected to attend. So our numbers, we hope next time that can increase. Again, we had short notice, so we were dealing with some staffing issues, but moving forward, we've got some big plans. We would like to do this training again at least once a year. 2 would be nice, but realistically, you know, 1 was probably what it will be with staffing and that kind of stuff. So we'll start early, fire department and the police department working together, and with the school board is finding a location for next year's training. And what we'd really like to do is try to get some involvement from the staff and even some of the students, because we could utilize more role players and bring in some of the staff members to make it even more realistic. So this was by far the best training we've had because it was at a school, and so there's ways to improve. We've kept notes on that, so we're looking forward to making the training even better. So moving forward for 2019, the Public Safety Training Institute, we're gonna host this training. It's Unified Response to School Violence. It's for school administrators. It's a 4-hour block, and we can do 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the afternoon. They can do it on multiple days. But this is for school administrators regarding active shooter. And it's free training because it's through UWASI. And then there's school violence for active shooter. This is for our school resource officers, our fire department, and our EMS personnel, so we're gonna bring that back and we'll do that training. And then we're also looking at, there's a new program out there, it's called ALICE. It's Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. Starting to be the norm for the training across the country, but it's real similar to what we're already doing. Again, hosting the Joint Active Shooter sometime in 2019. And then I know our sergeant in charge of our school resource officers is looking to work with the schools to do some active shooter training of some sort with school administrators, students. So she and I will be working together to see what we can do. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Carl?
Thank you. Sergeant, would it be helpful to, in the future, move it around from schools? Is there value for you guys in actually getting on a specific campus and learning it and understanding it, or does that matter?
Yes, sir. It would be nice to do all the schools eventually. You know, every year pick a different school. What our training staff did is we made a map of every school. We made a binder, so every sergeant, lieutenant, and captain in our department, commanding officers that will be in charge of these incidents, has a map book. So every school has, every binder has a map of every school. They've got a checklist. But moving forward, yes, next year we'd like to find a new school.
Good. Well, thank you for the efforts.
Sure.
Thank you. Director Christoph and then Director Sheffield.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate what you guys did. It's a lot of work, I know, and it's a learning experience. I did read the notes, and I attended recently a CSB, a California School Boards Association special workshop on school safety. It's a very interesting topic to me, and even as I leave the board, I'm going to have some thoughts that I'm going to share, you know, on occasion. But one of the things at the state level with CSBA that, you know, we talked about was in new technologies coming forward to help, you know, people working on this right now. I know that. I know with a couple of things that came out of the workshop, we had some people that were, quote, experts there, was there no simple solutions, but the mapping was very important. And we actually talked about the idea of the, you know, going ahead and doing a virtual, you know, tour of each of the schools, because an SRO is great because they know the school, but there's so much to it. You know, once we started talking about it, you know, which locks open from which direction. So the information going in when you go on a campus is so important to you guys. So we have, from our end, I think, many things to do as well. And I would encourage our community to get behind this, and, you know, as many times as you have to go or you can do it during a year, and the more information you have about our schools, I think the safer it will be. But again, thank you, and thank your staff for what you did.
Thank you.
Director Sheffield, then Director Anderson.
Thank you again for the update, Sergeant Reynolds. I guess while we have students here, I get my understanding that some of the training actually took place in a classroom setting. Maybe you could describe a little bit of what you do in the classroom setting so some of our students here have a sense of what actually would take place.
So what we're working to do moving forward here is working with the students to provide them information about active shooter. Is that what you're kind of talking about? So we want to bring it out and talk about the basics of what to do in the event of an active shooter incident. The information online from the Homeland Security is basically talking about the run, hide, and fight, and what are some of the your options given an event. So just to kind of answer questions, to talk to them about some of the things that are important to know about active shooter and educate them.
Thank you. So run, hide, or
yes.
Fight.
So it's basically Homeland Security has identified for active shooter. It's run, hide, or fight. But then we also want to talk about the ALICE program and get more into it about the alert, the lockdown, the inform, counter, and evacuate. So it's something that I'm going to work with the sergeant in charge of the school resource officers, our SWAT officers, to come up with some kind of PowerPoint presentation and start doing that.
Perfect, thank you. And just strongly support the use of our schools as training sites. I mean, this is where the focus should be. Every time that we hear about a situation, the first thought that comes to mind, I'm sure for many, is, was this a school? Did it happen on school grounds? Were children involved? So I strongly support the use of our schools. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Director Anderson.
Thank you for your report and for coming to share with us. And I agree that having you come and work in our schools and practice in our schools is really valuable. I also attended the safety workshop with Director Christoph, and one of the things that they really emphasized was you can't practice too much, and that includes our staff. So I really like the idea of pulling in anyone on the staff, because working through the motions is one thing, and then that would prepare you so that when you're working through the motions in a crisis, you at least have some better sense of what you need to do, and just kind of lowers the whole craziness. And then were all our school resource officers in attendance at your training?
I think all but one of them was away at training, so everybody but one of them made the training.
Because they would seem like a really important group to get there.
Yeah.
And then I'm just curious, since the fires, I have people in my family who are getting into disaster preparedness. So I have learned that there are sponges that will stop bleeding faster than like just pressure. There's something in these sponges that will stop bleeding really fast. Do you know about those?
I haven't heard about that.
Could you look into them for us?
I will.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and then if you could let us know when you're going to do the run, hide, and flight training for the students, because I think that would be super to have that done for them.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd also like to add that we are committed to expanding the relationship and partnership with the multi-agency training. Because this came together really quickly and our technology infrastructure project wasn't quite done, some of the tools that we've invested in as a district, including the bell clock speakers and the notification systems for lockdowns and other messaging to the ALICE program, which was referred to, will be instrumental in future trainings where we can actually use those devices for their intent, which is both visual and hearing messages and LED messages scrolling to alert classrooms and overall facilities of what's going on. So we'll be looking forward to working with SRPD, SR Fire to use those tools as well as we move forward with these training exercises.
I have something too. Go ahead, Superintendent.
Yes, I want to thank the officers again for this multi-agency. when I went out to hear some of the learnings between police and fire and medical, it was so interesting that we're not going to talk about here, but I think that was one of the most valuable things I took away, is what the three organizations learned about each other and how they needed to work together. Some simple things around communication. I have also talked to officers about using our GIS program and our drone at Piner and how we can work together with police to do some of the virtual filming at, not some of it, all of it, because the police have a drone as well. Correct. What a wonderful way for our kids to connect with law enforcement, to be able to learn the ins and outs about what it is we'd like to film, what it is we should film, and let our kids be involved in that part, and also utilize our GIS program and our students. So I look forward to that piece along with everything else that Rick talked about.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for this comprehensive effort, collaborative effort, and echoing what everybody else on the board has said. More practice is better and is great. I'm glad you're planning on more. I'm glad you're planning to get to know all the campuses. That's great, to incorporate our staff and students more. These are real important efforts, so we really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you all again very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, F4, discussion item, interdistrict and intra-district enrollment update.
I can go from the side.
While they're setting up, I'll tell you, students who are still here, you could actually also pull a blue card to speak on the item. So if you have some thoughts or feelings or questions. Or if you get to leave now, then you can leave now.
Thank you, President Close. Board members, Superintendent Kitamura. Today we're presenting an annual report from the Student and Family Engagement Office that describes kind of the process for our open enrollment that we went through last year. The cycle begins coming up in October, and it ends about the 10th day after enrollment, when we conclude enrollment lists and wait lists and those things. And so we're presenting to you the data that we accumulated from that office. Just as some overall highlights, we want to just kind of note that obviously in many ways we've already described, last year was an off year. We had to make some additions and extension of open enrollment deadlines was one of the examples. We also added fire survivors as a priority list that we did through board action during that process. Overall, our office processed 1,242 of those applications, and by the end of June, everyone had received open enrollment. The first choice, with the exception of Santa Rosa High School, which had a capacity, which had 79 people on the wait list. But unlike other times, Hidden Valley, Rio Carrillo, which had wait lists in previous years, did not have wait lists. Everyone was accepted there. Here is the grid that perhaps is too detailed, and of course we encourage anyone to study it in the board packet in more detail. It's kind of what we provided last year. It shows a number of important things. New to this grid would be the right columns, where now we're comparing from one year to another, and we're showing the interdistrict requests, and on the far end are the families that identify themselves as fire survivors or fire displaced. So let me take a highlight from that and kind of show you how that grid works. So if we're looking at Hidden Valley there, if we take that example, going across horizontally, you'll see all the open enrollment requests from the various elementary schools, and that adds up to 29. Last year there were 16 that were allowed in. Following that down, let's take Maria Carrillo as an example, a total of 121. Last year we had 95. The other important thing I didn't highlight on this report is at the very bottom, called the total open enrollment. So if you'll take the third column at the bottom, there's a number of 204. So if you work your way back up, those are the number of Elsie Allen's families that live in Elsie Allen residents that went to other schools. So it's the other piece of this you look at. If you take that across the way, 119 from Lawrence Cook, 119 from Montgomery High School, 124 from Piner. So that shows us the movement within our district, and that's one of the significant pieces of this grid and what we look at. So some of the highlights that we see here is we've noticed that there are fewer students that applied to Hidden Valley. Maria Carrillo had fewer students. We can, we project that something might be related to interdistricts, and I'll make a comment on that in a minute. And as we noted, that Hidden Valley was able to accept all their open enrollments, so we added 29 more than we did previously to 16, and Maria Carrillo, as I've said, had also increased the amount of open enrollment that they were able to handle. This next graph is talks about the exits and enters from outside the school district. And so again, and we did the same thing last year, based on requests to go outside the district or requests to come inside the district. And please recall that this is not just 1 year's movement. These permits are approved for a 3-year period, so not everyone every year has to apply. And so this is data that is a little more fluid than our open enrollment data. A couple of highlights in this that we like to identify for you is there's been decreases. The green up there show Roseland and Katati Roner Park were decreases in requests to go to those schools, to leave our schools. There were increases from Bellevue and Bennett Valley school districts. And then on the far right, I want to draw your attention to some of the the exit codes. So those are similar. We didn't do the comparison from year to year, but you'll see a lot of siblings, blanks, and the blanks are because the county office doesn't require the same kind of coding that we do, and those get proved by the other districts, so we're not able to get to that level of detail. And then we did a special one this time to look at just our fire displaced on the applications where they self-identified. And one nuance I want you to understand is there are more than 2 inter-district enrollment applications for students that live outside area. So as an example, there are more than just 2 people that say live in Windsor or Sebastopol or Guerneville that are now attending our schools. Because what we did is, if you had a resident address where you suffered the loss, you are still considered a resident. And so that's one of the things that we honored. And so that doesn't even appear on this because you're not open in enrollment. You are still that resident. That is your address. You're paying taxes. You're going to rebuild. And so you just came in as a resident. So I do want you to understand there are more than 2 families that are coming from outside the area into these schools to maintain themselves at their school of residence while they're going through, let's say, a rebuilding process. And it just doesn't appear on that, just the way we articulated their approval. And then some other data that we put in here, we done recently, we looked at a loss of students and their exit codes on why they left. So we broke down those 100 students and we looked at the various reasons of why they were moving around. That takes us to then the last 4, just students that move out of the area. We've never done this level of detail before, talking about those within the county, left the county but within the state, out of state but within the United States, and moved out of the US. So those.
How did you get this information?
So we ask parents when they leave, and there's a coding factor we try to do. So in part of CalPads, we have to try to account for everyone, and so we don't have dropouts and they don't count as necessarily dropouts for us. So we really go to great lengths. The school sites, even at the beginning of school when they don't have information, they're calling families. Our office helps them to make sure we get this data, and so we can identify to the state when we upload to CalPads that, hey, there are 46 students, they're not dropouts. They told us they moved out of the country.
I was astounded because you've got only 2 unknown. So, I mean, this was some pretty hard work here.
Yeah, Rick.
So I'd also like to point out that one of the steps we took immediately following the fires was to code those verified home losses with students. Through that process, we identified 817 students who lost their home. That could be siblings as well, so the number may not be exactly 817 homes. Through that process, we use that to identify services needed for those areas as well for those students, which also helped build into the Integrated Wellness Center and other initiatives we took on. So that was a marker we put into the student information system as soon as we could following student return to school and after talking with the students and their parents.
Thank you.
And so all that goes to start the cycle again. In fact, Monday we begin the cycle again, and that's our open enrollment window. We hope we do not have to extend the open enrollment for any reasons this year, and we'll go through our regular process. And I just want to kind of let you all understand that the data that you request, the analysis that we're providing you is really important for us to kind of analyze, and just as a culture, it's important for us, and we appreciate the board's guidance through this, to help us really analyze these shifts and where this looks and what that looks like, and the level of movement that happens. It's important for us to identify those trends and look at them. We may not find correlation in some of these, and it may be, you know, something we have to conjecture on why people are looking at, but at least we have some of that information. It's important for us to understand how many families in our district move from one school to another. You know, what LCL look like, or Pioneer High School or Montgomery would look like with those additional 100, 200 students. Those are all very important factors as we look through this. And so this is our third year of a revised policy, really looking at a process that helps guide us in the right direction. And this window is an example of just kind of how we're bringing our alignment, we're calling coherence of processes. This has also helped us do better for student schedules, better accuracy for budget and staffing, and all these other pieces that are important for other pieces of the system. All this kind of integrates itself really importantly. And so I just want to let you know, as we go through that, it is something that's really become part of our culture. This will be obviously an annual report to do, and at some point, you know, if we can find better correlations as our data improves, and we're having conversations already about having our intake of data in our new Illuminate system through this process for the future. So there's things that we're going to do to improve that data input, which gives us better analysis. And so with that, we'll open it with any questions.
I also want to add that the other system we're looking at is the system that created our capacities at our sites. Just as we are poring over every system we inherited, we want to revisit how the site capacities were determined, and so that will be coming back to the board as well. I can't emphasize enough what Steve is talking about in terms, and Rick, is what they're talking about in terms of not only open enrollment, but the shifting that's going to happen as a result of the fire, and just economics about the way the district may look now could be very different in a few years with regard to where students are going to school. So we have to be right on top of that. The second thing is, we know that our whole timeline for budgeting and hiring was extremely delayed this year for a number of reasons. And it all begins, if you want to really think about this, it all begins with this open enrollment process, our enrollment of kids and signing up for courses, determining the need of staffing, then looking at the budget, then looking at hiring. And so we want to be sure that we are going after staff that we need as early in the year as possible, which means we're going to be aggressive. So you're gonna, as a board, you're gonna hear this, that we're being much more aggressive on our timelines, such that we can get those quality staff early, we can get an accurate and appropriate budget adopted in June, and I can't wait to have that discussion with the board. I can't wait to bring that forward about what that looks like in terms of a timeline that is more aggressively going after teachers and administrators earlier if the need is there, but also getting kids' schedules in kids' hands much earlier as well.
Director Anderson.
Thank you. I really appreciated all this data and information. I'm curious, when you have other on the reason codes for exiting, do we ask for an explanation? Again, do they get away with just checking other?
Yeah, because those are county forms, so when they're leaving.
County and blank are county?
Yes, and so we can't control those, and you know, it would take a lot on our part to really have them go through. We're trying not to do two systems, require them to go through our own system where we have that level of detail and the county system. We'd love to bring that in alignment, some process at some point. So that's why we're not quite able to get really precise on those.
Sorry, I didn't realize that was county.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm curious how we communicate with families when there is still capacity in schools, because I think the public perception really lags the reality, because I know being at the campuses I've been at, people say, oh, you can't get in there, and I'll be able to turn around often and say, well, actually, you should try. And so I don't know what we can do to just let people know that, you know, you can, and even people from outside of the district, that you should really take a look.
Yeah, we do, the internal communication would be through our emails and our conversations and principals of site with our open enrollment windows. And as we've gotten, the first year we did mailing campaigns and we spent thousands of dollars to really get that word out. Word is out and things are a little more stable. But Superintendent Kuhnmurr has also reached out to incoming superintendents, and we're starting to have conversations with the feeder districts. There are certain schools that are hugely impacted, Rincon Valley, Slater, on that incoming 7th grade, and getting to those schools as part of the coordination that Superintendent Kuhnmurr described. Getting the coordination to get students in early, we haven't been used to that. Going to Bennett Valley and getting student requests early so we know what they want to do when they come to us as 7th graders, that's a next layer of coordination that we've already begun conversations with counselors and principals and vice principals to get out there. And so that's kind of the next layer of things we want to do to really improve the process.
Yeah, I think that would be super helpful, and especially the sooner you can get to parents, the better, because they start thinking, in 3rd grade, they're thinking about where they're going to go for middle school.
We've had the conversation with parents in kindergarten, trust me.
So the sooner the better on that. And what else was I thinking? I guess at some point I would love a discussion, maybe, sort of brainstorming or whatever, about focusing on increasing enrollment. We keep focusing on declining enrollment, and maybe a discussion around what can we do to increase enrollment would be kind of fun.
Okay, thank you.
Director Kristof.
Steve and et al., thank you for the report. This has been a topic that I've requested information and more information since I've been on the board. We had a nice, robust, interesting discussion last week about the need for data, and this is definitely a step beyond where we have been before, and I appreciate that. I think there are a couple things that are important to understand. California is, as a state system, has its issues, and one of the issues that I think people are very aware of is the lack of data and coordinated data among the school districts. And so I know our hands are tied to a certain degree, and we need to put more pressure on the state to do what's necessary to have the information to track students their whole lives, and have the information, for example, why they're leaving the district. And my thought is, and Evelyn kind of said it, are we losing students? Yes, we are, to other districts. Some of us know the reasons, and some of them are not so legitimate, and some of them might be legitimate. But the more we know about that, and then why are you coming into our district, those kind of interviews, I think are extremely important. 10 years ago or so, No Child Left Behind, or longer than that, it was like this, anything you want, as long as you have the resources to transport your kid, or you've got a sports program at a particular school that wants you. There were a lot of things that we're still dealing with today regarding, this movement of students. I would argue for as much equity as we possibly can among our students, our schools, in terms of providing sports programs and in terms of providing academic programs. I think that's a start, but I think if we can really dial the data down more, I think like our conversation last week was interesting, because it did beg questions regarding what's going on here and what can we do. I don't have any solutions in terms of the bigger picture, but I think it's still an ongoing issue, with this district, and I'd like to see maybe in the future the state help out, but let's get a little better at it too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Student board member.
I was just wondering, is there any kind of exit interview or something that we do with students who are leaving because of concerns with the district, or is it just
You saw that one slide with some data, so that's one layer to it. There are I would have to just say anecdotally with our staff in the SAFE office, there are conversations around why they're doing it. And in those, and you'll see in some of that up there, is there's not a huge amount because of a problem. I think, let me kind of articulate it like that. There are these other factors that you see there. Those other factors could be things around just convenience and childcare and work and other things. We, in our last 3 years of tracking this, have not seen something that ooh, there's this issue in Santa Rosa schools that we feel that there's a flight of families leaving for that, at least that articulated reason. So at this point, it'd be anecdotal, but I similar to Director Christoph, I'd love to maybe find a way to get some, some random data and analyze it and try to draw some conclusions from it.
I think that one of the things that will continue to help improve our data is the online enrollment system. So once we go to online enrollment, which is slated for this coming year, data fields have to be completed. Many times when there's a, paper into the computer, the codes, which are extremely important, and so how we get this data will be more unified once we can go to an online. So old school, and something we should probably take a look at, is that when a student was going to leave, you had to get an exit. You had a paper you filled out about exiting. You needed exit grades, exit, and you had reason for leaving at the bottom. And so if we could devise a system such that was more technology friendly rather than a piece of paper, and ask that specific question, reason for leaving, I think we could, get some information. The problem is kids don't necessarily tell us they're leaving, they just leave for a variety of reasons, a variety of family situations. And we can try to track down as best we can, and I know that our site attendance people, registrars, they work their hardest to do that. But it goes back to that uniform system you were talking about. If it was statewide, where they popped up, we could then find them and figure out what was going on.
Okay, anybody else?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for this comprehensive report. I appreciate you gathering all this data and presenting it in such a clear way. I kind of echo the comments made by other directors, in that, people vote with their feet, and so the good news here is that fewer people ask to leave and more people ask to join us, and so that's a good thing. It would be helpful, I think, with exit interviews, maybe just that one group of people who leave for other programs, even though they're not saying where's a problem here, but they're going to something for a reason. And maybe that would be good information to know, to be able to drill down into that a little bit.
Yeah, 250 would be, 205 would be different than 1,000, so that's far more doable.
Right, and maybe just, some kind of sample size of those folks would be good information. I know, there's lots of people in the community who are real interested in our data with respect to fire survivors, and I appreciate, the efforts that you guys have made to help provide that information and to really break this down, because it's informative to the city and the county as they make plans. We're the only data set that can answer the question, where did people go? And it's a pretty big data set, and so it's really helpful. So I appreciate your efforts in that regard, and I'm sure they'll continue for some time, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. F5, action item, geological testing at Proctor Terrace Elementary for new restroom building.
Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight we're going to update you on the Proctor Terrace Elementary restroom project that was previously approved by the board in February of 2018. To my right is Director of Facilities Mike Braff, who will provide the update.
Good evening, board. Superintendent Kitamura. I'd like to provide a breakdown of events of why we need this proposal approved. As you all know, a good percentage of projects have to be reviewed by the Division of State Architects, which requires a review by the California Geological Society for placing a building on site. This site sits adjacent to a state zone, which requires a fault study. As they know, and pointing out in this slide at the bottom, to me, left corner, orange or pumpkin color is where a fault has been previously found. And that was a low, it could be a low risk fault. With that said, we provided a report to CGS on May 25th. They have 90 days to review the report. Unfortunately or fortunately, there was new findings in July. So what we had to address, more information was requested based on the new findings in July by the United States Geological Society. So what we have to prove is that they know that there is no fault within basically 100 feet of the planned restroom. So to prove this, what we need to do is a fault trench investigation, which would be the two red lines, which basically each, that will total of 130 feet of trenchings, anywhere 6 to 10 feet deep, 30 inches wide, to determine whether or not there is any active fault based on the new findings. We have to prove that there is no active faults 50 feet from the building. So that's what this proposal entails, is for a contractor to come in, basically fence off, trench, a geologist to go 10 feet underground, review the conditions, provide a report, and we anticipate that this project will move forward based on the findings we have in front of us at this time, but we still have to put a formal report back in front of CGS. So if no faults are found, the anticipated project will move forward as originally planned. If active faults are found to be located within 50 feet, then we'll either have to modify the building, which is already built and ready, or we will have to find another area within the campus to maintain a 50-foot setback. So that's a little history on where we're at.
Ready for a motion?
Questions, comments, motion?
Yeah, well, since it's no fault of the staff, I'm going to move approval of the geological testing.
Wow. Yeah.
Needs a second, though.
It does. Everyone's stunned by the, by the extreme punniness of
Hard to follow that up, but I will second that.
moved by Director Carl and seconded by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield? President Close? Student Board Member?
Aye.
Jen, I have a question, if I can ask.
Director Christoph has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little late on this. Mike, we had a geological paper that came out, I think, in the 90s that was brought forward a long time ago anyway, regarding the district. And it had to do with various schools. There's a lot of faults in this area. Do we have anything that's up to date regarding all of the faults in our schools?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things about what happened was, as Mike mentioned, this fault was brought to the attention of CGS during the review process, where they used radar imagery to say there may be a fault in this location. It's now on us to verify that for CGS in order to get approval there, in order to move on to DSA approval. Another thing that Mike didn't mention, but I think is interesting, is when they do the digging, Mike said between 6 and 10 feet. That's because they have to dig down to where they can find dirt that is at least 11,000 years old to do this survey. So as soon as they can prove that they found that dirt at 11,000 years old or older, then they can conduct the testing. Another piece of this is after Miller Pacific does their work, then they have to have an independent third party come in and validate their report in order to send that off to CGS for approval. It's a very complicated process for what seemed like an easy project at the time of placing a new bathroom or restroom at Proctor Terrace Elementary. So we do know of faults in the area. This fault that was highlighted, we saw the brief orange at the bottom of the fault line. They're not sure it's there, they think it's there. That fault they think may be there also extends all the way through the Brook Hill campus. So this could have other effect on future construction or modernization programs at that campus as well. Hopefully our testing is conclusive that this fault is either not one we have to worry about or does not exist at all moving forward, but they're relying on us as a school district to prove their radar system.
F6.
Thank you. Go ahead, Superintendent.
I just want to say that since Director Carl brought up fault, I feel terribly bad for Proctor Terrace, who just wants another bathroom. Yep. And I want to acknowledge that, and I want to say that if it weren't for all of these faults and lines and things, that bathroom would have been in place. And I know they're wondering and asking, why don't we have a bathroom, for goodness sakes? So while this is going on, we have to figure out another solution. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's even possible, but we have to really be creative. And I don't know what that's gonna entail, but this could take a long time. And they are still in need of a bathroom, an additional bathroom. So tell me what magical thing you have to be able to do, not porta potties, that will help Proctor Terrace with the bathroom situation.
As the proof is on us, we do believe that this report will gain us approval to move forward. It's just a matter of time. Now, I can't sit here and guarantee you that, Diane, but based on all the professionals that are involved, they do believe that. Going back to what I mentioned of the setback of 50 feet, the option would be finding another location on site. The reason we're sticking to the location, the current location chosen, is that best fits the site and their needs, and the design's already done. So if we had to move location, then we're completely changing gears. So without getting alarmed and without telling you 100% sure, we do believe this is going to move forward. As I mentioned, the bathroom's already built and sitting, so it's going to be a matter of just doing the site package, which will go fairly quickly. So hopefully within, these findings will be done in the next 3 weeks, and then we'll have to submit. And once again, they have anywhere from a day to 90 days to review the report. We have asked, based on the holdup, that they review it right away. As soon as we hopefully get the approval, it will be done as soon as possible. But the plan B would be relocating it somewhere else on site.
Okay, so then I would ask that next week we go out to the parents and the staff and let them know. just what you said tonight.
On that note, the principal has been briefed on a weekly basis, and I just met with her and with the geologist a week ago before she had her parent meeting, so they are all briefed to date on where we're at and where we're moving.
Should we be moving to bring in some of those really nice portable restrooms?
I think that's still, even if we brought those in, it's a matter of placement, right? The legal placement of those, the portables, a portable potty.
So we could bring in some portable restrooms, and I've done that in the past, but what we have to do is first complete task on hand, because I would imagine if we're gonna bring those in, we're gonna wanna bring them in the footprint we're currently working on, which we can't have them in our way right now. So yes, we can look into that if that's what the direction is.
Well, I think let's find out how long, let's find out timelines. If we're talking many weeks out, we may have to come up with an alternative in a temporary, but I leave it to you as an expert, Mike, to get this figured out timeline-wise and then next steps.
I'll report out timelines, and then we can decide if temporary restrooms is the answer.
I'd like to add one more thing too. Yes, we can move the restroom, and that was a thought that we had when we were meeting with CGS to another location on campus. The reason why we didn't immediately go for that option was there is a distinct possibility, because of the unknown fault, that we still may jump through many hurdles to even do that. So it was at the recommendation of our architect and our geologist that we stick with the initial plan, because either way we'd probably subject to some type of testing with their uncertainty of the existence of that fault running through a part of campus.
Yeah. Director Sheffield.
So the restrooms are constructed. Once CGS gives the approval, how long until they're installed? How long does the installation process take?
So to bid the work, because it still hasn't been bid for a site contractor, because we don't have state approval, and I need state approval to be able to bid the project. So going back to, in a perfect world, we're still probably, if all the stars aligned, a month and a half away from approval to maybe 2 months. Then I need to bid, which is gonna take me a couple weeks, another month to bid and award, and then it, fast track, well, depending on where this all lands and weather, I could get the site package or provide a schedule for the awarded contractor for a few months.
So we're looking at April, spring?
Pending weather, yeah, we're looking possibly about six months out, and the site is aware of this.
Thank you.
Okay. F6, action item, selection of board representatives to an ad hoc parcel tax committee.
I make a motion.
Rick has something to say. Can he say it?
Oh.
We know what this is.
We know what it is. If you have anything to say that it would surprise us?
Just clarify.
No surprises.
No surprises?
This is an item to appoint 2 members of the board to the ad hoc committee to specifically look at budget forecast, parcel tax opinion polling, potential parcel tax structures, and election timing options, which right now we're looking at the May 2019 ballot. We'll also have discussions about the regressive nature and what some other school districts are doing in terms of square footage-based parcel tax that's being challenged in courts right now, but we will discuss that during this process as part of the charge of the committee.
Thank you, Rick. Director Carl.
Okay, well, based on that clarification, I'd like to nominate Ed Sheffield and Jen Close to serve on that committee.
Okay, so we have a nomination and a second by Director Carl and Director Fong. We have a roll call vote on that.
Director Carl? Director Fong? Aye. Director Christoph? Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student board member?
Aye.
Okay. Oh, student board member.
So I'm very interested in getting as many student representatives on decision-making bodies in the district as possible. And so I know this one, it's a little bit more complicated, so you might not originally think to include that. But even if we don't fill some of those positions, I think that we have so many high school students, and there might be someone who would want to take that on. So thank you.
Who wants to do it?
I think that's a great idea.
We can certainly add to the list.
Do you want to be on it?
Oh, man.
Think about it.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
But maybe we can add a couple slots there for kids, 2 slots, yeah. Great, thank you. All right, motion carries and meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.